Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show here on STV2. The main talking points on tonight's football programme. The SPFL will review Rangers' use of EBTs. Stuart Robertson and Les Gray join the SPFL board. Could Moussa Dembele be heading home to France? Yeah, welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show for the new season. Delighted you could join us for the first programme of 2017-2018. Alan Ruff is back looking absolutely bronzed, and alongside him our Monday night bootroom guest as ever, Gordon Smith. And boy, when I look at you, Ruffy, I think Gordon and I need another holiday to catch up. But here we are. You've got to be happy with this, Ruffy. The Starship Enterprise, I mean, this looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Obviously, being on holiday, I met a few people on the flight who watched the show. Loving it. I'm sure they'll be really surprised when they come back and see the studio. I tried to speak to most of them, but it's difficult when you're up in first class.
Yeah.
I wasn't up in first class.
Don't you bet on it. Listen, there's lots to talk about. A lot of things happened over the summer, which I think we're going to have to get our teeth into. But one of them that did indeed happen over the summer has brought about a statement from the SPFL. Of course, there was the AGM today at Hampden, and now the SPFL have announced that they're going to review Rangers' use of the EBTs in this tax scheme. And they'll review that. Hibs chairman Rod Petrie has revealed that they're going to look at this again and whether Rangers gained a sporting advantage, Gordon.
Yeah, I think that they feel compelled to do that because of the AGM. A lot of people have come out and said already that it should be just ignored and we should get on with things. So I think they maybe felt, in order not to create a big fuss right away with the supporters, if they just dispelled it and just said, we're not dealing with it, they've come out and said, we're going to have another look at it. So what they might do then is say, we've judged it again, and then they make a decision on it. They might still be going to say that there was no advantage gained by Rangers, or that there is an advantage and there has to be a punishment for that. So it's going to be down to legal aspects. But it was already, they brought in Lord Nimmo Smith, who looked at it before, and he was the one that decided last time that no advantage had been gained.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem here, Ruffy, on this, when passions run high, I think if you were a regular who made a comment about it based on the evidence you had before you, when you look at both halves of the old firm on this issue, you can lead yourself into a cesspit of arguments. Mm-hmm. But the upshot of this all is there will be a judgment made by the SPFL. I think their hand was forced on this one. Secondary to that, I think, because not just Celtic supporters, I think a number of fans across the whole of the Premiership are now driving this. And if they don't get the answer they're looking for from the SPFL, I think we will see this drag on to UEFA and the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
Yeah, I think that's the worst thing about it. We want to be sitting here talking about football, and that's what the basic thing we want to do. And obviously, you're right, it's going to drift on for a year or two, and it will be interesting to see which particular teams are the ones who are pursuing it. Because I'm sure there will be more than others, and to what gain, you have to make your own mind up with. I personally feel as if we should move on and start talking about the future and promoting the game. But it'll be interesting to see how it turns out.
It's a rivalry thing too, though, isn't it? I mean, a lot of the argument the fans are going to put up, or there has to be fairness and all that. But a lot of it's just down to the rivalry, maybe, the dislike of the club that's involved here. So I think that's a big factor, Peter.
I think the problem with that, Gordon, is quite simply if you allow it to be as basic as it's a rivalry and that's why people are driving this, then you leave yourself wide open to criticism. You only have to look at a situation where Russian athletes have been found guilty of doping, and their medals have been stripped from them and awarded to British athletes. Now, I'm sure the British athletes are not thinking about it as it was a rivalry. I think they're looking for some kind of fair judgment on this. If in the end, and thankfully we don't have to call it, and a number of people in the media don't have to call it, somebody will have to make a judgment on whether there was a sporting advantage. And when that happens, then, everybody who feels as if they're an authority on it can possibly shut up, and as Ruffy says, we can't get on with it. But I think that judgment is coming from people who will actually be able to look at all the evidence instead of some of the evidence that's being fed to supporters right, left and centre.
Absolutely, it will be down to it'll be down to legal people as well. I mean, it was obviously a judge the last time, and I think it has to be the same. Somebody has to judge it, and say whether it's a hard thing even for somebody who at that level can judge whether there's a sporting advantage. Before it wasn't long before that this 9 years of the EBT usage, Rangers had won 9 in a row without using EBTs. So what was the sporting advantage during that period? Celtic have won 9 in a row without EBTs. So did they have a sporting advantage? It's hard to actually dictate, Peter.
That's not the issue, though.
But the issue is whether EBTs were not illegal when they were used. EBTs were a legal use of financial. It was tax avoidance as opposed to tax evasion, which is illegal. Tax evasion is illegal, but EBTs weren't illegal. What they've decided now is that in terms of the use of them, they've gone against them. The Inland Revenue, the HMRC have gone against the use of them now. And there's a lot of people involved. There's thousands of companies out there involved, and so it's something that they were using, and that's what has to be decided, whether that they were using them in a wrong fashion, and that's what the decision has to be.
The unfortunate thing is Rangers have come out and said if we hadn't used it, we wouldn't be able to sign these players.
Yes,
that they were actually honestly and openly come out and said we.
I think it was David Murray. I think alluded to that once, and I think also Dave King made this a similar. He said we might have gained. That's what he said. He said we might have gained an advantage from it. Having said that, in the middle of the EBT period, Celtic won the league and Hearts were second. What advantage were they getting at that point then when they weren't even in the first two? So that would be the argument about how you decide on whether an advantage was gained. But there's no doubt about it, the actual fact that Rangers did it and had side letters was an issue with the league, and Rangers got fined already for that.
Yeah, I think over and above titles, I think a number of clubs will be looking at it from the basis that they were denied maybe cup final victories, and I'm not talking about Celtic, I'm talking about other clubs who were involved against Rangers. It is a minefield. You could dedicate a programme to it, but I think over and above that, there's another implication here, Ruffy, because HMRC will be coming looking for money from players or managers or club officials who benefited from it. You can look at the situation. Barry Ferguson was one of the players named. He's now officially declared himself bankrupt. I think a number of players might be caught short by this. A number of people might not have the money and may follow a similar suit.
Yeah, I think it's not just Rangers players. I mean, there are other people from other clubs who were involved in that kind of thing as well. But I think the fact of the matter is, when you deal, if you are actively making an effort to communicate and sort something out, you can make the deal. I think, unfortunately, the Rangers players have just been hanging, waiting to see how the whole thing was going to turn. And I think if they knew maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they could have made that deal, but they never made it. So now they're going to have to pay quite a lot of money. So you're right, the players will be...
Peter's right, that'll be a big legal factor as well, because an EBT is money that goes into a trust, and the money comes from a loan from a trust. Now, the big legal point will be about how they decide whether that money should be payable from the people who set up the trust, pay the tax, or the people who received this money, and they'll say it's as opposed to getting that money as income, you got this money as a loan from a trust, and then that will be the big, I would say, legal debate.
Oh, I think the case that has been judged by HMRC means that they're coming for individuals because they're hit for tax, as they say, somewhere along the way. It's going to go on and on. What a great topic to come back to on our first programme. Secondary to that, the SPFL was meeting to debate a number of other issues as well. There's been changes on the board. Stuart Robertson is on. Les Gray also voted on to the board. There's a number of people who are not on it. Let me just go back over. Les Gray, Anne Budge of Hearts retains her place on the board. And then down through the league, I think Chief Executive Warren Hawke of Morton, Martin Ritchie of Falkirk in the Championship, and also Stranraer's Ian Dugan will go in to represent the bottom two divisions. So there's a number of new faces there, Ruffy.
Yeah, there certainly is, and it's good to mix it up a wee bit. Some people say, that the smaller clubs say, that's too one-sided, with the big clubs getting most of the say. It's good to have it right down the leagues, so that they all have something to say about their own positions.
Okay, thanks to Ruffy and Gordon. So that's the first part of the programme over with, and we might get to football in the second part as well. There's lots to talk about. There's, of course, League Cup group matches to discuss, and we'll also look at some of the ins and outs of Scottish clubs, and, of course, over and above that, we'll look at some of the moves afoot. Could Neymar be on his way in a record-busting move? Well, we'll give you a little teaser here on the Brazilian. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show. Delighted you could join us for the new season 2017-2018. Alan Ruff and our Bootroom guest on a Monday night, Gordon Smith, here with me to talk football, and we will now get on to some of the football issues as well, because over the summer there was a couple of qualifiers that really brought more misery for Scottish clubs. St Johnstone was a bitter blow as well. I thought at one point we might lose Aberdeen, but we lost Rangers too, and now Celtic and Aberdeen are the only two flying the flag, Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, some of them, I mean, the Rangers was the most embarrassing one, really, getting out to Progress, a team from Luxembourg who just, not a lot of quality, a part-time team. They should never have lost, albeit they didn't have their full team. I mean, that's the only thing you would say in Pedro Caixinha's, from his point of view, is he was bedding in some players and he didn't have his full staff there at that point. But nevertheless, that it was still a tie they expected to go through, and it was an embarrassing result. St Johnstone was a disappointment because I just felt that they would get through theirs as well, but they didn't do too well. Aberdeen didn't have the best of starts, but in fairness to them, excellent result, you know, to go and win away from home. That's very unusual for Scottish teams to go away and win, so you've got to give them credit. Celtic had a comfortable win against lesser opposition. Linfield were never going to cause Celtic any problems, and the main thing from Celtic's point of view, the standard that they're at just now is to get into the actual group stages of the Champions League, and I think they will do that. Yeah,
we're going to talk about that a little later on in the programme. Here's a look at the morning papers and some of the headlines on the back pages, obviously dominated by the golf and Jordan Spieth, but on the side panel there, Pedro Caixinha just talking about the fact that he's got 5 skippers in his team, 5 leaders. They've made 9 signings. There was a clamour, Ruffy, for Lee Wallace to lose the captaincy. I think that would have been really harsh to say the least.
Yeah, I think obviously the reason for that is obviously the Portuguese captain coming in. You know, you would have thought he would be a leader on the park. But I don't think Lee Wallace has done anything wrong. I think even last year, when you saw him being thrown up there in front of the press, he always spoke very well of Rangers and everything that was going on. So I don't see any reason. On the park as well, I thought he had a reasonable season. So I think he would have been disappointed if it was taken away from him.
Yeah, I think it's a good decision to leave Wallace with it. I think that you bring in Albertson, he's a great player, obviously, but it's wrong to just bring him in and say you're captain. He's never played here before, he doesn't know the players, don't know what his English is like. As I say, at times a captain, it doesn't really matter so much who the actual captain is, as long as you've got strong personalities. And I think that's what Caixinha is saying there. He's got strong personalities in the team. Kenny Miller is a captain type nowadays. You know, he's got Dons in midfield, who's similar. Take a player, a strong player who's quite willing to say his bit. So in that respect, what he's saying is I've got leaders on the field, and I think they've done the right thing just to leave Lee Wallace with the captain.
How many short do you think they are, Gordon? 1, 2, 3 maybe?
Players-wise, I think maybe 2 or 3. I think that I'm still not quite sure about the attacking side of the game. Kranjčar is a great player. I never saw him as a captain type. He's named him as one of them. I wouldn't have said he was, because he's more of a player who is just full of flair and the type of guy that can change a game. Just depends how good he is. But I just think still in the striking side of things, I still think that they're lacking. And it'll be interesting to see whether the new ones are brought in, how they adapt, whether maybe they do come through and play. But I just still thought they might have gone for a real out-and-out striker. Yeah,
well, they mentioned 2 players, 2 Scottish players. One of them, of course, Kenny McLean. Aberdeen have put the shutters up on that one, Ruffy. Derek McInnes has just quite simply said nobody else is leaving Aberdeen.
No, and quite rightly so. I mean, he's the same as obviously Brendan Rodgers. You know, he wants to show the fans that they are determined to do something in Europe. And if you start letting the fans know that you're going to start losing players, then they're not going to be on your side. So actively, as they still are there with a good season they had last year, you want to keep somebody like that. You know, and the money that we're talking about isn't enough to make anybody bite. You know, so I think he'll stay. I think the Hearts boy. If Rangers were to really push the boat out and up that money, I think the boy might have something to say about that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rangers look as if they're going to make one final bid to see if they can tempt Jamie Walker away from Tynecastle, but no change according to the Hearts boss.
Not one thing has changed in that topic. So from my side of things, there's no news. So there's no worthwhile comment to be made. I also want Scottish players and talented Scottish players and players who know the Scottish game. So we've got some here. We're fine with that.
Be interesting to see how many additional players he brings in, and if indeed they are Scottish at Tynecastle. The stand is getting close to completion. I'm curious. I think he's got a big couple of months. I think Ian Cathro needs to hit the ground running, Gordon.
Definitely. I mean, he didn't have the best of runs at the end of the season. There's a bit of criticism there from the support as well. They've stood by him, to be fair, the board and Budge especially, and Craig Levein. But he has to get things going. He's made one or two changes. I think holding on to Walker, as you mentioned there, you know, Rangers are obviously trying to get him, but I'm impressed with him. And the fact is, last season he was top scorer. And if you're not a striker and you're top scorer, I think you're doing a great job, and that's what he does. So I think they will want to hold on to him, but who knows whether, if the right bid comes in, they maybe told the boy, you know, we'll let you go. If we get £1 million, you're off.
Yeah, well, money talks. It seems to be talking at the moment as far as Celtic are concerned. That story this morning that Marseille could be looking to tempt Moussa Dembele back to France. 20 million has always been the figure that I think some people have pushed it up to 30. Give or take who's telling the story, Ruffy. But would 20 million be enough to ship Moussa Dembele out in Brendan Rodgers' mind?
Yeah, I think so. I think Brendan Rodgers has always been honest with the fans that no deal's going to be done until where they are in Europe if they get into the group stages. But when you say 20 million, I mean, every time I was away on holiday and I'm picking up the papers and I'm looking at Chelsea signing somebody, Man City signing, even West Brom, you're talking nothing under 20 million. For players, I don't even know who they are. Obviously, they know who they are. So the going price, the market just now for a reasonable young player at other clubs, whether it's coming from France or whatever, it's 20 plus.
Yeah, it's the Scottish market. That's the problem. Do you think we're not getting anywhere near that? Look at some of the players that have gone down south. Young Andy Robertson went away already. He was at 9 million. Liverpool paid for him. When he was bought from Scotland, the price was nothing like that. There's no market in Scotland for players, so if they got 20 million, it's a fantastic deal, considering that's 40 times what they paid for him.
I'm thinking,
still a great deal.
Thinking with the Dembele one, you know, he's in the France team.
Yeah.
He's now an established under 21 player.
Yeah.
You know, his name's getting thrown about even at Chelsea. Now, if Chelsea are coming in, they're not buying anybody for under 20 million. So, I mean, it depends what club it is that comes in and whether Celtic want to go into the market.
It depends also if the lad wants to play regular football. The last thing you want to do, Gordon, is, you know, get signed for 20 million in some clubs and you know you're going to be sitting on the bench. That's the debate. The point with Celtic, and again, I think your mention of the Scottish game and how you know, low it is as far as the standard in European football. I think if you get £20 million for Moussa Dembele, you bite their hand off and drive him there.
I know what you mean, because there's two things as the case is. The price is a big factor, but the second thing is, have you got a replacement? I mean, Celtic might be looking at it and saying, we've got Lee Griffiths right now. He might be the out-and-out replacement and say he can do the job that Dembele can do, or you've got somebody else lined up to bring in, or you've got somebody who's coming through the system who can do it. That you need to know that you've got to replace this player, and if you have got that, and you can go and get a player like they did for 500,000 and get that kind of money from, you do the deal. Because the other aspect of it, Peter, you don't know whether they're looking at it and thinking, that was a one-off great season he had. Can he keep that going? And if he doesn't, his value's going to come down. He's at maybe at the highest level he's ever going to be.
Yeah, and just one little footnote on the Celtic issues. I thought the club acted responsibly in the 2-game ban for the people in the safe standing area, mainly the Green Brigade, Ruffy. Just quite simply because at the end of the day, you want fans to go and support the team. Once you start getting paramilitary banners and fans using the club as a platform to post their messages out, I think you're in dangerous waters. Now, you know, regardless of the stance that the Green Brigade have taken on this, quite simply the club will get fined again and again and again. And there's no way out of this.
No, I think you're right. I think the Celtic have been responsible that they have another 59,000 supporters who go to the game and behave impeccably. And they are the ones who will be saying to themselves, well, every time we go into Europe, we're getting fined here. The money that's gone out of the club, which will be coming into players and making us a better side, surely they have to be reasonable and accept what's happened and tone it down, because there is no... They make everything happen at Parkhead. We can't take away for that, you know, the atmosphere that they generate. But as you say, when they're giving out these signs and banners, it just doesn't look good for the club.
Yep, it's obviously a fair bit of dialogue needs to take place, but I think for the benefit of the club and their standing in Europe, fans have to behave. Undoubtedly, you'll have your opinion on it at Peter and Ruffy on Twitter and facebook.com/Peter and Ruffy. You can give us your thoughts on that as well. Have a wee look at our Neymar question. Coming up in the next part of the programme, we'll hear from Neil Lennon, the Hibs boss. We'll also hear from Motherwell Stephen Robinson on how the Fir Park side are faring as they get ready for the new season. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show here on STV2. Alan Ruff and Gordon Smith are alongside myself, Peter Martin. Join us if you can, Monday to Friday. We're on at 7:30 for the full hour on STV2, and also on the Saturday, August 5th, our first Saturday show back. We start at 2 o'clock, bringing you the best of Scottish football across all 4 divisions, and of course we'll look towards the English Premier League as well. So lots to talk about, lots to chat. You can interact with us as well. We'll be having good chats with fans from every club across Scotland throughout the season. If you want to get involved, then do contact us at Peter and Ruffy on Twitter, and use Facebook too, and we'll get you on the programme and get your point of view on your favourite team or something that's bugging you in the Scottish game. Of course, the season is up and running, mainly due to the fact that this League Cup group section is underway. Here's some of the results from the weekend across all the groups. And they are Stirling Albion starting off with a win. John Robertson far from happy with Inverness's showing. They lost at home to Falkirk, and Dunfermline, Alan Johnson's side, get a great start with a win against a Peterhead team that are spending a bit of money this season. One wonders if they'll be bouncing back from their relegation at the end of last season. And there's Hearts with a comfortable win. Kyle Lafferty endearing himself to his new set of fans. Elsewhere, Dundee with a win, and you'd think with a 2-0 win that the players would get their day off, but they were denied that. Neil McCann not happy with the way they played. Their rivals United had a comfortable one against Cowdenbeath by 4-1, and there's the other Group D match, Arbroath 4-0 winners against Montrose. And just in case you thought we'd forgot your team, Kelly, with Lee McCulloch, we'll hear from Lee McCulloch shortly. They got a win against Annan. Clyde with Jim Chapman happy with a 2-1 win over Dumbarton. And there at the bottom, there was an emphatic win for Motherwell over Morton. And Queen's Park started off with a win there against Edinburgh City. And one last set of results from the weekend. I think Alan Archibald's 5-0 win, Ruffy, screaming out a 5-0 win against St Mirren in Group H.
Yep, I think that's been the most impressive result so far in the competition. I don't think the St Mirren manager or the players would have expected that. I think we all thought that was going to be tight. But again, I always think pre-season, it's always good to get into winning ways. A lot of people say, it's just getting your fitness and whatever, but it's getting your confidence as well. It's getting confidence to go into your first game of the important games, on a winning run. So I think that this tournament is up and running. I think it'll get, like all these tournaments in the early stages, they don't look that competitive, but I think as it moves on, I think it'll get really interesting with the ties.
I think it's a good setup, actually. I think I'm impressed because the group stages do mean that the teams are not. They're getting friendlies, and some of the low division teams are getting a chance to play against the bigger clubs to see how they can perform against them. And by the same token, the bigger clubs are getting matches which should be comfortable for them. They're getting a hard time because the smaller low division clubs are obviously working really hard. I went to see Kilmarnock and Clyde recently, and Clyde were winning 2-1 at half time, and Kilmarnock had to step up their game, and eventually they won 4-2. But they're good games because it's good competition, but it's also getting the teams really warmed up for the start of the season, for the start of the league campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. You going to add something?
No, I was just going to say, when I was obviously away abroad there, I was looking at it. It was interesting to see you get an extra point for the penalty.
You win the penalties,
and I'm
that's
just
a good
wondering
idea.
if that was a rule that you tried to push through.
No,
a couple of years ago.
it's one of the ones I didn't. only take credit when it's due, actually.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can't believe I took credit for that one. Anyway, let's look at some of the teams that we mentioned there in the group stages. First of all, Hibernian. There's a lot of players that Neil Lennon has shipped out. He's brought some players in. He's changing the side for his assault on the Premier League, and of course, this is a Neil Lennon has said that they'll be looking to finish second. I think if Chris Commons' back injury heals the way he hopes, I don't think it'll be too long before we see him in a Hibs top, Ruffy.
Yeah, that looks the way. Obviously, he's had a wee taste. I've been there before. I think Chris Commons would be impressed by the support that was there last year. The stadium was full. Great atmosphere to play in that environment, and obviously he knows Neil particularly well, but he'll be influenced by the players that Neil is bringing in. If you're a player that you're trying to sign, you look at what kind of caliber's there, and I think he'll be impressed by what Hibs are going to be doing.
Well, what he's trying to do, Neil's bring in players who are experienced in the Premier Division. He's got Swanson in now. Ambrose is meant to be coming in. Commons be a good one. Boy Murray from Dundee United is also a prospect. He's getting better and better. So from that point of view, I think Commons would be a great signing for Hibs.
I think the one that would lift the entire fan base would be Anthony Stokes coming back.
Yeah, I think he's an exciting player. He's a fans player. I personally didn't think he lived up to the expectation when he was there the last time, if you don't take out the final. But that's the one that the fans will remember. But apart from that, I think they were looking for a wee bit more in the league. But again, he's got all the ability in the world, and as I said, he's a fan's favourite, and he can do that wee bit of magic, and that's what they like.
I'm really looking forward to see what Hibs do in the league this season. They've got a manager who won't tolerate anybody dropping below a certain standard, and I think every Hibs fan will be looking and wondering who they're going to be linked with and if they're going to get them in. But Neil Lennon's a wily old campaigner, and he's not going to be drawn on any time limits and targets that he wants to bring into Easter Road.
I'm looking to bring another couple in at least, and there'll be a few more, I'd imagine, leaving, whether on loan or on a permanent. So, we're sort of 2/3 into July. The window doesn't close to the end of next month, so I'd still say there'll be a bit of business to do. These things,
set a deadline for
no, there's no deadline. Deals are deals. And I'm not on a big rush at the minute, but there will come a point where there's a cut-off point. But negotiations will be ongoing. So, hopefully we can get it resolved to our benefit.
I really think he'll be a different prospect this season. I think Hibs will be a different type of side in the Premiership with him as the manager.
Yeah, I think the first thing they've got to do is defensively. They've got to be a lot stronger. There were certain games last year where I thought they were going to just go off the rails a wee bit when they were getting into games expecting to win them quite comfortably, but losing silly goals. So the experience that he's trying to bring in will sort that out. I think 2 or 3 in the league's a bit ambitious. You know, I think you want to go up the next year, and if you were to get into the top 6, I'm sure the fans would be happy with that.
Yeah, I'm not going to call who's my favourite for the relegation. I'm just looking closely to see what kind of business clubs are doing, because the difficulty is, I mean, for example, Motherwell, Stephen Robinson, he's really got to duck and dive, and of course there's still the threat that he could lose Louis Moult.
Yeah.
And if he loses that calibre of striker, I think it becomes really difficult.
I think that's a big factor. I think you're absolutely right. I think that would be something they would try to avoid, because Moult is a goal scorer. Ian McDonald, a good relationship, that's not going to be there next season, or this season I should say, but I think Moult would be a real loss to Motherwell for him. But they brought in 9 players, and he's looking to bring in more even.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, confidence growing in the squad, as you would expect. An easy win over Morton. Certainly nobody would have tipped that against Jim Duffy's men. But Stephen Robinson seems happy with the way things are progressing.
I've recruited 9 players, hopefully 10 by the end of the window. It's been good. You know, we've got a lot of players we went after. And the biggest thing for me is people want to come play for Motherwell Football Club in the Premiership. You know, and that's been the biggest thing. You know, we don't pay the biggest wages, we don't have the biggest stadium, but what they bought into was what we were trying to do, and that was a big plus for me.
Well, we're going to see his side, you know, because this is his team this season. He's chopped it around that much.
Yeah, I think the worry is always when it's a large amount of new players coming in. Although that you know them individually, you don't know how they're going to mould as a team. So that's always a worry for you early on. You know, if you have a team and players that you're pretty happy with, and you're only bringing 2 players in, then you know the large extent of what you're going to get at the beginning of the season. But sometimes it can just, you know, new guys coming into a dressing room can make the place a happier environment. And if you're winning games as they are just now, then all going well.
Yeah, well, it seems to be a happy place according to Motherwell's Chris Cadden.
We've been really good, and what I think the gaffer has been battling in is we've not really had an identity the last couple seasons, so we've tried to get that back in the club. And for say Aberdeen to come here, they're going to come here and say, oh, Motherwell, it's going to be a hard game. So that's what the gaffer's trying to get in, and I think we've proved that the last couple of games.
OK, that's Motherwell. There are League Cup fixtures to look forward to tomorrow night. Here are a number of them. If you fancy going to a game, if you're a neutral or indeed a fanatic of these clubs, get out there to Falkirk against Forfar, Stirling Albion against Brecon, and in Group B of the Betfred Cup, East Fife Elgin, Peterhead against Hearts. Buckie Thistle take on Raith Rovers, Cowdenbeath against Dundee's on the Wednesday. It's Hibs against Arbroath and Montrose against Alloa. And even more games on offer. Ayr United against Clyde, Dumbarton against Annan, Berwick Rangers, Queen's Park and Edinburgh City taking on Motherwell. So there you have the League Cup and what's on offer for you. After the break, we'll look towards the European games on offer for Scottish football. A big week for Celtic and Aberdeen. We'll talk about that next. Yeah, I think they only spent 48 million on Neymar buying him from Santos, but it looks as if I think there's a buyout clause which Paris Saint-Germain are contemplating £199 million. The market's gone completely bonkers.
Yeah.
We're now in a situation where I thought Jose Mourinho summed it up brilliantly last week when he said the market's crazy, and now you're not 50 million doesn't even buy a great player. It's just maybe a good player.
I think it's just interesting how you finance that, you know, and obviously there's things going on outside of football, because it certainly isn't the attendances at games, you know, because most of the English clubs' attendances are 40, 50,000, so that's not financing the wage bill of everybody that's at that club. I'd love to know what the wage bill is on 1 week of a team with all the superstars at it, and how you actually finance it, because 2 or 3 years ago we were all talking about that fair play thing coming in, where you had to actually balance everything out. I mean, I think that's
you still have to do that.
Well, how do you balance that one that you're talking
Well,
about?
what they do is they get clubs who all of a sudden announce a sponsorship deal for their training facility. I mean, there's many a way to get round a rule, Gordon, but I think we're getting to a point where it just becomes really, really silly. Again, who would have thought all those years ago, and it's something pertinent to you two guys, who would have thought all those years ago when Brian Clough eventually paid £1 million for Trevor Francis? That probably was good business when you consider what he contributed to Nottingham Forest. But I look at the back of that, I think Kevin Reeves, the boys, Daly, the amount of mediocre players who moved around for colossal amounts in England at that time, English football has shifted the market across Europe. It has had major implications for every club.
Absolutely, and it's crazy. I mean, I think Neymar is brilliant, but I certainly wouldn't think he's worth 199 million. I wouldn't think worth anywhere near that, because I don't even know. I would look at him and think, is that a player who could actually do it if he wasn't playing in the Barcelona team? Because when he plays for Brazil, he doesn't turn it on the way he turns it on when he plays for Barcelona. A bit like Messi to a degree. Messi has a harder time playing for Argentina than he does playing for Barcelona as well. But Messi is a better player. Messi contributes a lot more, better technique, scores more goals. So I just don't understand. But maybe Paris Saint-Germain, I think they're owned by people from Abu Dhabi, aren't they? I mean, they're owned by very rich Arab sheikhs and all that sort of thing. So they've got more money than just comes in from TV and gate money. They're a very, very rich club. Is
it fair to say, Ruffy, that we hope Paris Saint-Germain fans will be hoping that the electric cars don't take off? Which destabilises the oil industry. But, I mean, right now, Man City have just bought Benjamin Mendy. It's a colossal amount of money. They paid £52 million for a defender, which takes the heat off Kyle Walker. They've spent over £200 million already to finance Pep Guardiola's plans. £200 million, Ruffy.
Yeah, it is. It's a different scale of what we were talking about. But if you're a football player and you get a wee rub of the green off that, if the way people are coming in to your club and getting X amount of pounds and you're falling into that bracket and you're getting more money as well, what comes around goes around generally. But some of the gamble, the young boy, the young French boy, the striker, what are they talking about with him?
They're talking about
18-year-old.
80 million or something like that. But the thing about it, Peter, I'd make the point is, you just mentioned two players there that Man City have bought. That's over 100 million for two fullbacks. Now, if you're going to spend kind of like enormous money, I think you should be doing it on players who are creative, are match-winning players. You don't win matches with fullback. Are you saying then that they cannot develop, coaching-wise, young players come through at the club, or players that can get from other teams in England for less money than that? That's just incredible. £105 million for two fullbacks.
Yeah, now nobody's talking about Pogba because all of a sudden United have spent a colossal amount of money on Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah, I was saying to Gordon there, he certainly looks the part. I think if I was standing in the tunnel waiting to go out and looking at him, across at him, I think I'd be starting to worry because he actually looks not only, a terrific football player, but he's got the physique to frighten any defence. And again, he's got to come up with the goods. So a lot of clubs have signed all these players, and sometimes it takes them a while to start hitting the back of the net, because when you start talking about that kind of money, you're expecting them to do it every week. I'd give something special. And 9 times out of 10, generally, most of them do turn up.
Yeah, most players who've been touted as getting a move get it. The one that's boring me at the moment is Alexis Sanchez. I just wish they'd sell him. It's now getting to, he's been on the papers, on the TV non-stop all over the summer. Will he, won't he stay? And of course, Virgil van Dijk's another one. I think Celtic are hoping he eventually gets his move because they'll get another $6 million.
They'll get cut out of it, I know, but he's obviously wanting his move as well, Van Dijk. He sees himself as better than Southampton. And to be fair to him, you've got to give somebody credit if they've got that kind of level of confidence in themselves. Then you think he will be able to play at a higher level if he feels he's made for it. But Sanchez won. I really like Sanchez. I think he's a tremendous player, and I think Arsenal would miss him greatly if he left. Yeah,
OK. All of these players coming in and coming out, obviously for the holy grail of the Champions League for a number of the top clubs. We have a similar situation up here this week where we're hoping the two surviving clubs can really, give Scottish football a feel-good factor. Celtic disposed of Linfield, no problem. They've now got Rosenborg. They're not the side they once were, I have to tell you, Ruffy. But if you look at the Norwegian table, again, they're out in front. at the top there with Sarpsborg, Molde, Brann, a few well-known names there, but they're getting back to where they once were.
Yeah, where they once were with the team who always surprised everybody by getting into the group stages year on year, you know, and that's what with quality players. But like every team, you take a wee dip, and they have done that. They're well into their season. The players will be fit. They'll be confident. Obviously, I don't know if it's a good thing. The first game is at Celtic Park. I always prefer the second game to be at home, but I think Celtic have had enough games now. They've had enough competitive games. They get caught cold last year in Gibraltar. This year, I think the players have actively finished an incredible season. They've not had a long time to forget about it, so they'll still be getting into games remembering what they've done last year, so that the confidence will still be there.
Absolutely. You know, the funny thing you said about the result, about playing the first game at home, I've found watching European football over the last few seasons that that's turning around now. That it's actually a lot of teams are actually more comfortable away from home in the second game, because the opposition generally then have to do something. They've got to come out and they'll leave themselves a bit exposed because there's so many teams now playing counter-attack football.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Celtic can expect, Gordon, because this is something that I think a number of people who are aware of Norwegian football have mentioned. They'll play a 4-5-1. They'll come to Celtic Park on Wednesday night and just try and hit on the counter-attack.
They will, and sometimes, but then again, Celtic will have the advantage when they go there. If Celtic can get a good result, as I say, that's what was a big letdown with the Rangers scoreline, was the fact that they won 1-0 at home, and generally winning anything nil at home is enough for you in Europe nowadays, because you can go away, get one goal, the opposition then got to get 3. So Celtic, the main thing from Celtic's point of view is how they defend against Rosenborg. They've got to defend well at home, and if they can go over there with a lead, not having lost a goal, I think Celtic will be comfortable. And
I'm a big fan of Derek McInnes and what he's doing at Aberdeen. There was a wee suggestion that he might have been looking at pastures new. He's there, he's signed a new deal with Tony Docherty. It was a great result, I thought, against Shrioke. I think, you know, from the Dons fans' point of view, now it's Apollon Limassol. They want to kick on again. I think they've actually made some really good signings, Ruffy.
Yeah, so they are. I think they do. I mean, although somebody touched on it at the end of the season, the team is going to be dismantled. I think he's done well. I think they look on paper, they look a lot stronger. I think they'll get a lot of confidence for winning that European tie once you've seen that you can go into Europe and compete. So they'll go into this game again, you know, with a wee bit more confidence, but they really have to start doing the damage at home. You know, that's where they're letting themselves down. And I think the only thing they've got to compete against is the Heat over there.
Yeah, 2 clubs in the group stages would be fantastic. It would be the shot in the arm. I mean, we're nowhere near where we want to be in our coefficient, Gordon.
No, exactly. That's the major factor, the coefficient. That's why I know a lot of people are fans of certain clubs. They don't want to see other clubs doing well. I think we should look beyond that and say, no matter who you are, you could get the advantage of Scottish clubs doing well in Europe, because that's the coefficient is a major factor, and that's why we've got so many qualifying rounds to play. That's why we're having to start playing so early, is because our coefficient is low based on what's been happening with Scottish football over the last few years. So if Aberdeen and Celtic could both be there in the qualifying rounds, I think it'd be a big boost for our game.
Yep, OK. On tomorrow night's programme, we will hear from Brendan Rodgers looking ahead to that Champions League qualifier. We'll also talk in greater detail about Aberdeen and their opponents. And we'll be joined by former Airdrie manager Eddie Valecki-Black. He's going to be talking about his experiences personally and professionally on the programme. Thanks to Gordon Smith from Ruffy and myself. Join us tomorrow at 7:30 if you can.